Welcome to Inside the Market. I am Adam, and each week we sit down with top producers in different marketplaces and really just get what they're seeing on the ground level in real estate, aside from all the headlines you hear. So today we are joined by Brian Batiz, who is a top producer in the Central Florida marketplace. I am extremely excited to see and hear what Mr. Batiz is looking at and seeing on this ground level. But before we really kind of get into it, Brian, do you mind kind of getting into how long you've been in real estate and what really your main focus is in the market right now?
Yeah. So first and foremost, thanks for having me on, man.
Of
This is
course.
awesome. And essentially, so for me, I've been licensed since 2021,
Okay.
and I've been doing it full time really since 2022. So I got licensed like September of 2021 and started full time that January.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and so the reason I got into real estate was really just I picked up a book one time, Rich Dad Poor Dad, classic
Yep.
cliche, you
Yep.
know.
That's a classic one.
My
I
mom
think
was
we've all
like,
heard about it.
yeah, she said you gotta read this book, and I was trying to get myself educated on my own finances, things like
Oh, I
that.
love that.
And matter of fact, at the time I was in sales, but I was selling wine, so it was different.
Okay.
And I just got the idea of real estate after hearing this or listening to this book, and just wanting to really get into the investing world was where I was at. So I never really thought I was going to be an agent, to be honest with you. Um, but the moment I saw kind of uh, the reward that you can get, through the hustle and everything, and
Yep.
really selling a house in the paycheck compared to me selling a couple boxes of wine is astronomical difference.
I
So
would bet there's a night and day almost, right? Yeah.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And so when I did my first deal, I was like, okay, I'm actually pretty good at this. I'm good with the relationships, with the people. And even prior to that, I actually am a college dropout. So that's my
Oh,
backstory.
okay.
I went to school in Santiago, Chile for a few years for an architecture degree. And so I knew at the time how to build houses, how to do all the floor plans, all the things, but just needed to figure out how to sell. And so 2022 came along, and for 2022, 2023, and 24, I was on teams.
Okay.
And so with that, I started off as a buyer specialist, got my way into listings eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 3 years of doing this, last about 18 months ago, I decided that I was kind of just a little tired of working for someone else's brand.
Okay.
And even though I was very comfortable where I was at and I was making great money and all the things were aligning, I just wanted something more for myself. And so
I
that's
think that's
why,
understandable.
yeah, I made that leap. And so now I'm a single agent, and my main focus is listings.
Okay.
Um, Particularly, it's expired listings. I'll tell you a little bit about that in the future.
We'll get into that
Right.
definitely. Yep.
And beyond that, I work with some buyers as well. Uh, One, I really limit how many buyers I work with just because of the time they take.
Yep. Okay.
So it's either people that are selling with me that are also going to purchase, or if not, close friends or referrals, someone that I know that knows someone.
Understandable. So mainly like a sphere of influence, the people you know, or you've kind of already have to do business with them on the other side of things, and just you make it work.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool. So it sounds like you have a lot going on. It sounds like you've really been through a lot in your real estate career as far as seeing what the team aspect of real estate brings along with the single agent aspect of things. Do you have any, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but do you have any thoughts or what you liked on a team and what you like being a single agent? I know you said maybe you wanted to do the single agent thing to build your brand. Is that where the motivation comes from?
Yeah. It was like, um, at first, and I think this is for anyone that's getting into sales, it's like you want to learn the process.
Yes.
So if someone were to ask me today, like if I could do this all over again, what would I do? I would definitely join a team. Like I'm glad I
Okay.
made that decision
Yep.
getting into real estate. I feel like it's a much lesser learning curve, and so you're going to be
Hmm.
surrounded with people that have experience, and a lot of the teams are either providing you opportunities or some sort of lead, and then if they're not, they're giving you some sort of other connections or
Hmm.
advice, right? So you're not kind of at it alone.
Yep.
I think if I was like lone wolf and started like that, I probably wouldn't be in the business today
Okay. I,
because
I I understand
it
that
is not
definitely.
easy.
Yeah. Not today.
No, but yeah, for me personally, it was that. I think after getting a few years of experience and getting, I guess, my hands dirty and really learning some ins and outs of things, I had this knack and this this little bug in my head that was like, build your own thing, do your own thing, like entrepreneurial
Yep.
spirit.
I
That's
was just about to say that. That's
Yeah,
the entrepreneur in you, I think.
100%. And so I come from a family of like no one's gone to college and everyone's always started their own business,
Okay.
and so I've seen that
It's almost in
hustle.
your blood.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
essentially. And so that's what I would tell you was it for me, and that was the big change. But definitely new agents. If you're hearing this, 100% recommend a team that you're comfortable with, learning, getting your hands dirty, and then from there, if you want to go and do something else, up to you. But
I love that.
either way, I think both models work phenomenal.
I love that. It sounds like for you, you just feel like the team gave you the foundation to be underneath you so that when you just decided to really take that leap, you were able to do it comfortably. And maybe even if there was a ramp up to be productive and everything, you knew exactly what you had to do day by day rather than getting into the business and saying, where's the money coming from? Where are the leads coming from? It kind of
Right.
pointed you in the direction.
Yeah, 100%. And even to that point, what I would say is, I think if you do want to go single agent, even starting off, which
Hmm.
is totally fine, I think the brokerage you align yourself with is probably one of the most important decisions that you'll make.
I would agree. I
Yeah,
would agree 100%. If
yeah,
it's not a team that you're on, I think a lot of people overlook the education or the investment a brokerage can put into their agents.
hmm,
And regardless of whether they get the education and all of that from the team, from the brokerage, it's just important they get that to be the best agent they can be.
yeah, 100%. And so it's interesting now because we're in this landscape of like, obviously post COVID, Zoom
Yep.
was invented, all these
Yep.
things, and like even where I'm at now, it's virtual. So like
Okay.
we have an office where we hang our license, but it's not really an office where I can go to.
Not a brick and mortar
Exactly.
business. Okay. Fair
Right.
enough.
And so you got those models, like those newer concepts where, clearly they've got less overhead. And so the splits might be better,
Hmm.
right? Which is one of the reasons I made the decision
Yep.
to go where
And
I'm
I
at.
think that's one of the things you hear about teams and everything would be splits. So if that's they're
Right.
working to make that better, that may entice some people.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me, it was at that point when I made the decision, I was like coming from a background where I was at Keller Williams,
Hmm.
and you go to the office, the agents are there, you've got a support staff, a
Yep.
team, like all sorts of people that you can lean on to, we meet virtually,
Hmm.
which is great, but like I haven't met my broker in person, haven't really had to call them or do
Oh
those
wow.
things.
Okay.
So like I think it's everyone's got their own cup of tea. If you're starting out in the business, I'd recommend something, like a Keller Williams or
The more in person type of
yeah,
thing.
like the
Okay.
brick and mortar, and you
Okay.
got somewhere you can go. And because the truth is if you're not doing that and putting yourself in that same environment and energy, I really doubt it's going to be very difficult for you to actually hold yourself accountable and do the work at home.
So that's I think you just took the word that was in my head, and it was accountability. I know
Yeah,
for me, because I'm with Keller Williams, I know for me having the collaborative effort that you get coming to the office can be very beneficial. As you said, everybody's a little bit different, but I do see as a newer agent, somebody who was looking to get in the business and really didn't have an idea of what they were getting involved with or how do I find business, coming in and being able to talk with your senior agents or coming in and asking your broker a question may be more beneficial. But for somebody like you, who, as you said, you've already gotten that in the past and you've built that foundation, having a virtual office place, I feel like would allow you to maybe be more productive because you don't have to come into the office. You can just start firing away
right.
and getting out in the road and making deals happen.
Yeah, so it's like at the end of the day, it just depends what everyone is comfortable with and what they're looking for.
Hmm.
But yeah, it comes in stages. So I, whatever it is, that decision is probably going to be one of the most important ones that you make in this career.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I would agree
100%.
100%. Perfect. All right, Brian. So, kind of pivoting, we kind of briefly talked about the market. I know you said you were kind of post COVID and you've seen a lot. I would say we have gone into a very unique market right now. Going into the market, I would ask what kind of assumptions did you have as we initially entered into the market? And what ended up, was it wrong? Was it correct? Like, what was the assumption you had and how did that turn out for you?
Yeah, so, and I think everyone's been on this boat. It's like we had this ride in 21 and 22 where houses were selling themselves and
Yep.
there was business for everyone to be had. And you'd show up and there's lines out the door to watch or see a listing,
Mm.
right? Um, but as far as today's market goes, like my expectation, I think for everyone, it's been the same. It's like hopefully this gets better.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a good way to, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
and so where we stand, I think so. Real estate comes in cycles, right? And this is my perspective, and this is kind of one of the things that I walk my clients through a lot too, so they can kind of understand like why the economy and where we're at is the way it stands. But thinking COVID,
Mm-hmm.
we take ourselves back to COVID, and the economy is not moving. Capitalism isn't necessarily working because no one's buying, no one's spending. Everyone's stuck at home, quarantined, and they're scared for their lives.
Yeah.
Right. So the government decides, okay, how can we stimulate the economy? How do we get people up and moving and spending money? Right. We need it to cycle, move in, move out, and so they drop interest rates. And so all of a sudden, you've got people that are sitting between 2 and 3% interest rates, things that are artificially made. We won't see them for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this expectation that when you sit down with a client, whether it be a buyer or seller, that at some point rates are going to come down to that.
Yeah.
Right.
We hear that all the time.
Yeah. And so the funkiness to this market, I think one is just really understanding the basis for why the economy is where it stands. Like if we're sitting at 6% today, that's not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like
in the grand scheme of things, no, it isn't.
Right. Like I remember my parents' first home, I think they bought it with like 18% mortgage.
I believe it. Yep, I believe it. Which is
so,
a lot different than 6% or 8. Yeah.
So it's nuts to think that, right? But at the same time, there's all this, I guess, locked optimism for people expecting the market to be better this
Mm-hmm.
year or last year. Obviously, last year it wasn't. It was actually the lowest in housing sales since 1995, right?
Okay.
So I think if it's somewhere between 4 and 4.5 million, that's where we ended up with sales, but as a nation.
Yep.
And so for people to think that this is going to change this year, I really doubt that it's going to happen. I think it's going to be an incremental thing over the next 3 to 4 years. Like we've been in this cycle of a bearish market since 23, right? So
Yep.
I think it was July of 22 when they dropped it, or they increased
And
interest
the
rates.
rates started increasing. I believe July or August. You're right
So,
on the money.
Right in that time. But for us to like really put things into perspective is like we have to sit down and educate whoever we're talking to.
Yep.
And that's just leading with that will definitely put you in a position to win, and having people understand, look, rates, they're not going to change. The
Mm-hmm.
economy is not going to change your value. Right now it's probably going down slightly,
Mm-hmm.
like the way we're seeing.
And a lot of markets, yeah.
Very bearish in a lot of markets,
Yep.
especially in the Sun Belt states, right? Yep. And so with that said, I think educating your client, helping them understand like where the economy is and why it is, and really just kind of biting the bullet on the fact that we're not going to see 3% interest rates again.
Mm-hmm.
Like those things are artificially made. You saw them during COVID when we needed to stimulate the economy. And then the last time that you saw rates that low was somewhere in the 1990s, like during one of the great recessions that we had in that time frame.
Those are used to, as you said, stimulate and create people going out into the market, buying houses, going into the economy, stimulating growth. Mm-hmm. But when we have an economy like we have that maybe they don't necessarily need the same growth, or it's more of a standardized economy, you don't see those outside forces coming in and, as you said, artificially dropping the rates or anything like that. And in that same instance, I think what we hear a lot of people say is, when's the market going to crash? And I don't think, based off of what you're saying, we're seeing that either, because we're not seeing the large scale foreclosures, even though those are up. We're not seeing the large scale like we saw in 08 or the defaults or anything along those lines.
Right.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, 100%. With what I told you prior with the whole COVID thing,
yep,
we dropped rates. And then on top of that, we injected trillions of dollars into the system. We printed money for that occasion. So obviously, you go to McDonald's and the dollar menu really doesn't exist anymore.
I don't even think there is one. Yeah, it's the $5 menu. Yeah,
you go to McDonald's, it's like you're not going to spend less than $15 for yourself. It's nuts. But it's just the new reality. And so what I think people need to get acquainted with is the fact that there is a new price level, and that is across the board for the cost of living in the United States. Okay, right.
Based on what we saw in the economy previously, COVID timeframe, and a little bit afterwards, we saw like you said, interest rates going down artificially low, and we also saw an artificial injection of the money supply into the economy, where they just printed money and allowed inflation to get a little bit higher than it should have been.
Right.
Do you think what we're seeing in the market right now, because a lot of people are saying the market's going to crash, it's going to
Right.
drop off, do you think what we're seeing is more of a stabilization from that artificial high that was created, and the adjustment may seem like a drop because it was so high as far as the
Right.
injection?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, great point. I think, yes, to kind of ground there, at the end of the day, we were artificially high. And so, what people thought was the start of a crash,
Hmm.
in reality, was prices softening because demand softened,
Okay.
right? And so, naturally, when rates went up basically 2 times or 2x overnight,
Hmm.
and they jumped from 3.5 to like 7, and we were seeing rates
Almost
almost
eight.
8.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people are just priced out of the market.
Correct.
And so naturally, there's going to be less buyers, there's
Hmm.
going to be less sales. And at the same time, if we think about it, this whole price, the reason the market won't crash, or we can't really compare it to '08, is just after '08, we kind of learned our lesson. And so the reason the market crashed in '08 was because of all these loan products and
Hmm.
the way the banks were creating these mortgages that people 3-4 years from now weren't really going to afford, because
Correct.
this new variable rate was going to kick in. And once that actually happened, boom, the economy imploded and everyone needed to sell.
Hmm.
And that's why things went under, right? So now I think we're at a point where, at least in the Sunbelt states, or at least here in Orlando, Florida, which is the market that we serve,
Yep.
right? I can speak to that for sure, because even parts of Florida will be different sometimes,
Correct.
right? But naturally, I think we're at I would tell you, like a new, more normal, or a new pricing level, new expectation
Hmm.
for what it means to buy a house. Like pre 2019, $200,000 was a pretty good house,
Yeah,
you know,
it was. Yeah, in a
for
lot
a
of
lot of parts
places.
here in Central
Yes.
Florida. But the reality is that now that number is closer to 400,000,
Hmm.
right? And so people just have to understand that the market isn't crashing. There's variables. There's a lot of things that, yes, and there's going to be always media headlines that are going
Hmm.
to scare you. And so everything is dynamic and always changing, but it's not going to crash because, one, at the same time, we have a huge inventory uh, issue. Like, we don't have enough houses or enough affordable houses for these people to buy.
Okay.
And also with that, it's just, I think it's a matter of time for people to just really understand that if you want to be a part of that American dream, which I heard recently, the new average first time home buyer is, I want to say somewhere, it was either 38 or 40 years old.
Yeah, I heard 40. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would. Yeah,
So that, to think
it's
about that,
amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
it's a huge change.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just a new reality for people to understand. And it's a matter of, well, don't give up on the idea.
Hmm.
It's an American dream. It's your dream. Everyone wants to own and do their own thing at their own house,
Yep.
but it's going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what it is.
I would agree with that. And honestly, before we started, what we were talking about was education. And I do think the education, as you're saying, what's going into the market, what allows you to purchase, I think that goes into it a lot. When you or I, when we meet with a buyer and we're discussing how to purchase a home, a lot of times, even if that buyer is below the age of 40 or something along those lines, a lot of times when you get into what it takes to make a purchase, it becomes a lot more realistic for them, and they're able to kind of check a couple boxes that they didn't know they were able to. So, saying that, I'll go into the next question. Where do you see a lot of buyers hesitating in this market? Is it based on interest rates? Is it based on what they foresee in the future? Do you have anything that you've kind of keyed in on?
Yeah. So it's it's definitely a money thing,
Okay.
right? And so, not money as in the sense of like, okay, I'm shooting for a $500,000 house, or no, it's like most people, they're looking at a monthly mortgage,
Hmm.
right? A monthly budget. This is where I want to be. And so, hand in hand, yeah, you're definitely left and right hearing this conversation or this narrative of like, no, I'm just waiting for the right time for
Yep.
rates to kick in,
All the time.
right? Yeah, all the time. And so, the truth is that, and as cliche as it might sound, is if you're waiting for that specific thing, then you're going to miss out all the opportunities,
Mm.
right? And so, to put it into perspective, I actually have good friends of mine who are building a property now. And these builders out there, they're getting creative. They're
Yes.
doing and they're offering sort of like different
Yes, they
products
are.
that are going to bring that monthly mortgage more in line with the budget that people need, because
Hmm.
they understand that the affordability is the problem, right? And so there's, I think, two things that I'm hearing is the interest rates or that affordability aspect from the buyers, and then the other thing I'm hearing is setting the right expectation, especially if you're working with a first time buyer, in the
Okay.
sense that you're not going to get everything you want on your checklist, right?
I think that's so important to go over with them. Yep. Yep.
And so and the reality is like, well, if you want everything on your checklist, you're probably going to spend seven figures.
It's either price, yeah, price goes up, exactly.
you
Yeah.
know
And making sure they understand that, because it's important for people to realize there is a such thing as a starter home, and your starter home isn't
Yes.
your forever home.
Yes, that was my next point. Actually, I was going to tell you.
Okay.
I was like,
So
um,
I'm jumping the gun. I'm
no, no,
sorry.
no. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But that's literally it's what it is, and I get it. Like, we all want to and be bougie, and we want to be on our social
We
medias,
want to
and
live in the house our parents lived in and we grew up in.
yes,
Yep.
and so the challenge is that with those expectations on interest rates and monthly mortgages and things, they're looking at properties that are probably putting them in a position where they're going to be house poor. And
Mm.
so if we're talking about really caring for that client and educating them,
Hmm.
it's sitting down and saying, okay, what are the needs? What is going to actually serve you and your family for years to come?
Hmm.
Because it's not a short term commitment. And then from that, like, can we level those expectations? Like, to put it into perspective, you can go and buy new construction, or you can go and buy a beautiful house and spend the $400,000,
Hmm.
but there's still plenty of opportunities that are under that or closer to 300,000,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
But the thing is that a lot of people right now, I think, especially with younger generations and in general social media and wanting to live that life that we all think and want we deserve, right? um, is why are the same people that are shopping, like, why can't they conform and maybe just get a two bed two bath,
Yeah.
or a three bed one bath? Like,
Hmm.
do you need all of the other luxuries? Do you need the granite countertops? Do you need, like, at the end of the day, you're buying the house.
Yeah.
And so if you're starting, it's like, just start.
Yeah. I think it's also too important for them to think about, if I am like living here, as you said, this is not something that I'm going to be here a year or 2 years, but I'm going
Right.
to be here a little longer than that. And if I'm here, I think they said the average home buyer is like 5 to 7 years they stay in their house. If I'm going to be here, let's say 5 years, if a countertop is a deal breaker for me, is that something I'm willing to do? Or if flooring is a deal breaker for me, is that something I'm willing to do? And actually going out and figuring that out, I think that may be willing to have them get the 2 bedroom, 2 bath that they can afford and then update later or something like that. I think that's
Right.
so important for them to kind of view and really kind of play with and see if that's a reality, because I think affordability is one of the biggest factors with the purchase.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, I think if we're, I would say a lot of those people that we're talking to that have those expectations, they're probably in one of these luxury apartments that we see all
Correct.
around,
Yep.
and so naturally those finishes are the granite tops and the LVP and everything's modern and beautiful and
Hmm.
updated. It's not yours,
Yep.
right? So you're still paying 100%
And
rent.
once you leave, you're not taking it with you. Correct.
Exactly. And
Yep.
so if we can level part of that expectation and, like you're saying, put that into perspective that they're not going to be there just 12 months, and it's probably at least ideally that they're there, 5 years,
Hmm.
and naturally, um, just really educating them on the fact that they can do those upgrades or do DIY, or,
Yep.
I mean, YouTube, man, you've seen that
You can
nowadays.
you can build a house with YouTube almost. Yeah.
Literally.
Lay the
So
slab, and yeah, no,
yeah,
it's impressive.
and that's one of the biggest things at the end of the day, is just setting those expectations, educating them, caring for that client, and really showing them at the end of the day they make the decision,
Hmm.
but showing them the different opportunities, and then from there they're going to be the ones to sign the paperwork and do the things. But as long as you took the time to really go through those steps,
Yeah.
I think you'll serve them to the best of your ability.
So a buyer who goes into the purchase process fully educated, knowing what to look for in the process, monetarily, and the search, I would agree. I think they're going to be a lot less hesitant to enter the market because they're going to feel fully equipped. So I absolutely love that. Kind of switching gears, what would you say as far as sellers? Do you see, especially with you working with expired sellers a lot, do you see a certain avenue or a certain habit that sellers are repeatedly doing to leave money on the table, or a mistake that a lot of them are making in this market?
Yeah, yeah, it's it's almost like this specific topic really puts me in it gets me upset, like mad
Okay.
almost, because um, like we're real estate agents, and unfortunately we all have this name tag or this description or this cliche, like, oh, he's in sales, like that's your typical sales
Yep.
guy and he sells used cars or whatever it might be, and they're just trying to pull a quick one and make some money,
Correct.
right? and
Yep.
and I'll tell you, I'll be honest, a lot of them are that way. Like I've run into
Well,
realtors
yeah, it
that
is. Yeah.
unfortunately they probably shouldn't have a license,
Yeah.
but it's part of the
I
challenge.
think it's like the used car salesman. Even if you met a good one, they didn't
Yeah.
get the name for no reason. There's a reason they have that
Yeah.
stereotype. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get it. I
and,
get it.
and so with that, the reason I'm going off on that tangent is because there's also a lot of realtors out there that are getting their licenses specifically for purposes like wholesaling, right?
Okay.
And so for all the sellers out there that are considering selling, and you hear the word realtor and you think in your minds, oh, I don't want to talk to a realtor. Like that sounds disgusting or whatever it might
Mm-hmm.
be. Like your previous experience was terrible and that's why you have that idea in your head. Um, I would tell you to be very wary and cautious of what is being offered to you out in the current market from non-realtors, right? And so there's this, as you know, a bunch of wholesaling going
Yep.
on, and
Especially here
unfortunately,
in Central Florida.
so much here, like a
Yes.
lot.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's just given everything people are seeing on social media. They're going out. You don't even need a license to wholesale. But
Correct.
for those of you that don't know, wholesaling is, I call up a homeowner. Let's say the house is worth 300,000. I tell them, it needs some work and all that. They want to sell it as is. Okay, we'll buy it cash. I'll buy it at, let's say, 190, right? And then get it under contract, paperwork signed. I find the end buyer or the actual investor that has the money,
Mm-hmm.
and that person ends up buying it, let's say at 200,000. So great, I made $10,000 as a wholesaler. That's what wholesaling is.
Correct.
So, two experiences: when sellers are getting bombarded by these people,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so they're hearing what's in the media, they're hearing what's out there, the cash offers and all those things, and then you've got this group of wholesalers,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know why, but a lot of them, and even my personal experiences, I've run into some really nasty, hasty situations, but they buy into whatever the product is that they're offering. And so I get it. A
Gotcha.
realtor, like if you go to a realtor, your expectation is you're going to have to go on market, you have to make the place pretty, you have to paint and do all these things just to get it sold, right? And no one, I mean, a lot of people don't want that. Like
Yep.
it can be a pain in the butt,
It
right?
can be a little bit more than just selling it as is. Yes.
Exactly. And so if you're a seller out there, just be wary of who it is that is on the other side of that conversation or on the other side of that offer, and do your due diligence. Like if you got a realtor contact, talk to that realtor, pick their brain, someone that you trust, and they're not necessarily like they're entitled to anything, but if they it's some advice, but more so like just take it to your legal attorney and just
Mm-hmm.
have them to review the deal,
Yep.
right? So for perspective, I'll tell you, I had a seller that they had gotten one of these offers from a wholesaler,
Okay.
took the deal, they were good. Again, person didn't end up closing. Like they just didn't have the money, never sold it, never, like it was literally
Correct.
on the MLS.
Correct me if I'm wrong. With the wholesalers, that can happen more often than not. Where even if they lock you up in a contract, if they're not able to find somebody on the back end, unfortunately, they can
Yeah.
walk away from the deal without any penalty. Is that pretty common?
Yeah, and so this is the thing, is like I've run into it so many times over the past couple of years, especially even so recently, where people are just ending up in bad positions, ready to move, and then the day before, day of closing, they get the call and like, hey, we're not going to be able to close.
Oh wow.
And that's why I say, like, take it to your legal attorney, or take it to a realtor, not necessarily for legal advice. Let's be
Mm-hmm.
clear there, right? We're not going to step out of our own lane, but there's some basic things like escrow deposits
Yep.
that you should be looking out for. And so a wholesaler, at most, and even some of these cash buyers, like they're probably putting down 500 or $1,000.
I would
You
say
know,
that's pretty common.
that's what I tend to see per
Yeah.
contract, is maybe $1,000. And so what they're really, if you want to take it to court, great. Like you're going to spend a lot of money and time doing that. But at the end of the day, what they're really risking is $1,000.
Correct.
And so while the seller is spending maybe 15 grand to move out of state,
Mm-hmm.
and so for my sellers out there, I'd say that that's one of the biggest things that I am seeing in the market right now, is that there is exposure to a lot of these other opportunities. It's not like, maybe back in the 70s where you had the yellow book of real estate, and everyone, like, the only way you could really see a house or find out about houses was through a realtor.
Talk to your agent. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not like that anymore
it's
with
not like that.
Zillow and Realtor.com.
And
Yeah, that's so
so
true.
those same people have just as much access to information as we do, and
That's
that's
so
where the
true.
caution needs to lie.
Okay. And so I think right now, especially in the Central Florida marketplace, not only are we seeing wholesalers in general, but we're seeing these like cash offers. You touched on
Oh
that.
yeah.
Um, I meet with a lot of people who are saying, I want a cash offer. Just give me a cash offer. I want to sell my house as is. Just tell me what my house is worth. Put a
Right.
cash offer on it, and I'm going to walk away. In your experience, Brian, are you seeing these cash offers? Are these majority of the time wholesaling contracts, or these actual like MLS buyers? What kind of buyer is going to be presenting a cash offer in your experience?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And actually, I think, again, no legal advice here, no nothing. Everyone's at their free will to do
We're
whatever they
not
want.
lawyers, we're not attorneys, we're real estate agents.
Yes,
That's a great
100%.
thing to put in there.
But the thing is I see three types of cash offers.
Okay.
Okay. The first one that I see is what we were just talking about, the wholesaler,
Wholesaler.
which
Yep.
isn't necessarily even a cash offer because they have to still find the investor with the money.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like that's a guaranteed cash offer until they find that end buyer.
Right. And then there's a lot of models out there with different cash programs that they're offering, right, and marketing and all sorts of things. So your second category of cash buyers that I'm seeing tons of is on the MLS.
Okay.
And it's independent investors or local investors that are repped through an agency or an agent here locally.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, what I am seeing across all of my listings is same guy, same agent, same algorithm or formula, same lowball offer.
Yeah.
And so it's like they've got it down to a T. And they probably, what I imagine is on the other line of that, they wake up and they hammer out 30 offers to whoever it is. It's a numbers game. Someone's bound to say yes.
Someone's got to say yes eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's gotten
That
to a
makes
point
sense.
transparently, Adam, where I take the initiative to talk to my sellers about the same thing. Because legally, we're required to present all offers.
We are.
Right?
Yep.
And they will literally write it up so that you're
You
required
have
to
to
present
present
the
it to them,
offer.
yes.
Right? It's different just getting an email, right? Or a verbal
Or
offer.
a LOI or something versus an
Exactly.
actual
But
offer.
they're literally taking the time, and I'm sure now with technology and AI, like they can probably even do it faster.
Oh, I would believe that. They can
and
just
more.
write me up an as-is contract. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, that's one of the other things that I'm seeing. But I'm seeing the same thing, same people, same, supposed investor or agent representing said investor. And to put it into perspective, they're probably coming in at around 60% of market value. It's kind of what I see, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. And so, and they, oh, we'll pay your commission, we'll do this, we'll do that. In reality, I mean, it's gotten to a point, like I was telling you just before, that I sit down with these sellers, my clients, and I tell them, this is what I'm required to do. I'm required to present all offers for $1, for $1 million. Your house can be worth 300, whatever it is. Have to present it. So anything, just naturally, in the essence of time and efficiency. So anything under like 70% market value or 65% market value, I included into my listing agreement that essentially a lowball offer. That's what it's designed to protect. We're just not going to.
We're not going to present
it's just a rejection,
We do something similar, and that just, I think, time-wise and frustration-wise for the seller. If you're constantly hitting them with lowball offers, that frustrates them. So I would say that's something we do as well.
Yeah. And so that's definitely, I think, in the interest of any agent out there to make sure you have those upfront conversations. But kind of going back to that final category of cash buyer is, and this is where the legal advice I think would come in, so we're not lawyers. There are, in my experience, there are two very reliable, very known, because they even ran Super Bowl ads, cash buyers out there, opendoor.com, offerpad.com.
Okay.
Right. Interestingly enough, opendoor.com, right? Open Door used to work exclusively with an agency that I used to be at. And so they were not necessarily open to the public to the point where they could actually go on their website. Nowadays, you can go on that website, either one, submit pictures, go through this like little form application per se, and give all the descriptions for your property, and then within 24, 48 hours, you have a cash buy or like a cash offer, like a range. Right?
I've seen that.
Yeah. So before, Those are two probably legitimate cash buyers that I would tell you that I would trust, that I've personally seen firsthand close several deals,
Yep.
right? At the same time, still, they're not paying more than 70, 75%
I was just about to
of
ask you
market
value
value.
wise.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so, matter of fact, when the market was hot, they were paying more. They were paying closer to like 80, 85.
Oh wow. Okay.
And if you think back to that time, a lot of them were. So at the same time, Zillow iBuying existed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yes,
then
I remember that.
naturally, we're not going to be able to tell where the market goes tomorrow. And so Zillow was one of the ones that went under,
Correct.
and they no longer offer that cash program
Mm-hmm.
because they were pretty aggressive, and it was such a competitive
Getting
market
properties and ended up having properties.
and
Yeah.
losing tons of money,
Yes. Yes.
tons.
I remember that like it was
So
yesterday.
yeah, and so it's crazy to see that and think about that. But those are kind of your three cash
Okay.
buyers I'm seeing in the current market.
I think you broke that down really well. So the first one would be wholesaler.
Hmm.
The second one would be just a straight investor or investment company,
Maybe
and a lot
local.
of it local, and a
Hmm.
lot of it is going to be the same investor. Maybe they have different sales agents working for them or something along those lines. And then the third one would be what we call like an iBuyer program. They
Okay.
work with realtors as well at
Yep.
times, but that would be, it can also be direct homeowner
Yes.
to the company. And I would say, in my experience, I would agree. Those two companies, just because my time in the business and seeing the consistency of the deals. Now, obviously, they're not giving you 100% of market value,
Right.
but I think that's the trade-off there. If we don't go to market and we don't have to deal with the added headache per
Yeah.
se of the market, then we're gonna kind of leave a little bit of money on the table. But
Yeah.
I would say those two are going to be the two that I see the most legit when it comes to cash offers. So
Exactly. And
yeah,
that's the whole thing. Like legitimate
yeah,
companies that are not guaranteeing they're going to close,
yeah.
right? I have seen a couple, very few, but in my experience, it's been a good experience with those companies
Yeah.
when I've had to deal with them.
And when we're talking about cash offers, I think that's the best thing, is just knowing you at least have the surety of closing, as long as everything is operated properly.
Right.
If you have that gray area that we might not be able to get to closing, I think that's where the hesitation and the real uncertainty can weigh on you and create that anxiety, and then ultimately cause issues down the line.
Yeah, and so I think that there is a cup of tea for everyone, and there's going to be sellers that are going to want the as is
Oh yeah.
cash deals every time, no matter what, and so they're never going to stop existing.
Yep.
But at the same time, we have to make sure that we're educating them on that, because if you think about it, if we're talking a $400,000 house, let's just say the average or median price here in Orlando, they're leaving potentially 80K plus on the
Yep.
table.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that, because just like yourself, we deal with a lot of expireds, and we also deal with a lot of people who are looking for cash offers, and a lot of them, for some reason, it's marketed to them like a cash offer as is going to be 95 to 98% of market value. And
Yeah.
so that's why we're always going in, and one of the first things I try and do when I'm talking to somebody, a seller or somebody who's even feeling it out, I'll say, well, do you know what the difference between on the market and maybe cash offer or off market offer would be? And one of the first things we talk about is the difference in value.
Yeah.
And then we create what market value looks like. How do we determine that? Pull comps on the market, what is sold recently, and then we can build that. And then once they have a full picture and they're like, oh wow, 400,000 versus 300 to 320. I'm leaving 80K on the,
Yeah.
that's a lot. I don't know if I want to do that. I may be willing to repaint, or I may be willing to
Right.
do flooring or something.
Or I may be willing to pay a realtor, and
Yeah,
that's a
there
lot
you
of
go.
times that you have a large part of that audience that the main reason they don't want to is because they feel like they're spending or overspending money on, whatever percentage the realtor's charging them.
Yep.
But in reality, the people that end up going with those cash offers, they're losing, you know, way more
Yeah.
than whatever it
A
was that they
lot
would
of
have.
times what I find is they don't meet with the realtor and they just go straight to the cash offer, so they don't even know what they're leaving on the table.
Yeah.
Or if they met with a realtor, it wasn't a good experience, like you said, and they just decided, I don't want to pay that, I'm going to go this route, and they don't even do their due diligence. A lot of
Yeah.
people, like you said, everybody has their cup of tea, but when people actually have the idea, this is what my house is worth, not this is a Zillow value, like a real understanding based on the market, I
Yeah.
think that education and the expectations you set go a
Mhm.
long way for what they see in the market.
100%.
Perfect. Fantastic. So adjusting here, we talked about the different assumptions you had going into the market. You kind of talked about what you adjusted in your business, moving from a team to moving to being a single agent. But did you have any changes, like very recently, you've made to your business to adjust to this market and make sure you were still a top producing agent, make sure you're still seeing the same level of success?
Yeah. So I think my greatest challenge, and we kind of touched on this even prior to us talking here, but my greatest challenge at first was, okay, I've gone on enough appointments. I know how to convert. I know how to talk. I know how to, do all the things, but find or get or generate that lead. And that
Mm,
is, for every agent out there, that is your number one job at the
mm,
end of the day. No matter what you're doing, you got to make time every day to go out and find new business. And there's kind of, with that, the adjustments that I've personally made is narrowing down on, as cliche as it sounds, the one thing, right?
okay.
And so there's a great book out there, The One Thing. If you haven't read it, definitely need to, right?
That's
Uh,
another KW book, if I'm not
I believe so.
mistaken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
great. I mean, KW has great,
Yes, they
great
do. Yeah.
resources in that sense. 100%. And so the one thing, the way it applied for me was when I made that pivot to single agency and operating on my own, it was okay. I need to make leads, or I need to generate leads, and I need to do that as fast as possible,
Yep.
right? And so I put thousands of dollars. I did everything, man. I did the postcards. I did the social media boosted ads. I paid for some Google, like the
The SEO.
SEO and
Yep. Yep.
everything. And
Yep.
so you can go down a rabbit hole.
Yes, you can.
I'm glad. What
And
one
money
thing I
goes quickly.
Yeah, one thing that I did not do that I'm glad I didn't do was, the buy the leads and things. Not because you can do, like Realtor.com or Zillow.com. They
Yep.
have those referral programs that work a little bit differently. But there's also a bunch of other companies out there that are offering something similar as far as selling you leads, supposedly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You get texted about them all the time. So I didn't do that, which I'm glad. But I took all these things, did all the mistakes, spent all the money just to end up with no leads. Matter
Oh,
of fact,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So actually, matter of fact, I'll give you an example. I spent around $8,000 on postcards, right?
Yeah.
Like to start. I
Yep.
was like, I'm going at this hard. I'm going to do it, and I was like, okay, this one, I'm focusing on this. I had a list. I was going to hit the list every month, and I did that, right? And then about like 6, 7 months in, I'm like, I got one call. I had one appointment.
Oh,
And so
wow.
obviously, I mean, I'm not a marketing genius. My postcard probably wasn't the greatest,
Yeah.
but at the same time,
Spending that kind of money for that kind of return
exactly,
is tough.
right? And so it's like, and in my head, I'm like, I just need one. I need one to close, and then it
That's
makes
real estate.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so I didn't get any. I learned from that, and then I took a step back, and I was like, okay, I was reflecting on what I knew I was good at. And so what that meant for me was, prior when I was on these teams, we always understood where the lead source was coming from,
Yep.
right? And so for me, my highest point of conversion was expired listings. And
Okay.
yeah, and so like I remember that, and I understood this. I understood the sentiment. I understood, where they were coming from, what they wanted, what they needed to hear and
Yep.
go through to get them in the position that they wanted to be. And so my one thing for me was, okay, what am I good at? Expireds. Great. How do I put all my effort into just generating expired listings? You can do a bunch of things. People mail them, people call them,
Mm-hmm.
people, they might show up and door knock them,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can do all those things. For me, I just get on the phones. And so I realized that the one thing that I needed to do was jump on the phones, and it looks like at least 8 to 10 a.m. Sometimes it'll go to 11 a.m., right?
Okay.
Every single morning, Monday through Friday, right? That's the minimum.
So at least 2 hours a day.
At least 2 hours a day. And
Okay.
matter of fact, that was last year, but I upped the number this year to twice that. So now I've got an 8 to about 10:30 session, and then in the evening I'll hit it again because I know I don't get everyone in the morning,
Yeah.
and so I'll hit it again 5 to 7,
Oh, wow.
right?
Okay.
And so I'm spending about like 20 hours on the phone per week,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And so the one thing, if I could just kind of like focus or give someone some advice, is, again, kind of the cup of tea analogy. Like
Yeah.
everyone's got their own cup of tea.
Yep.
There's a lot of agents. I know a lot of agents out there that they make all their money just making YouTube videos for new construction properties, and they make a lot of money,
Yeah.
right? And they make a lot of sales,
That
help a
is
lot
hot
of
right now.
families,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
And so there is so many avenues out there. I would tell you, whatever you do, choose one that you're good at, that you like, that you enjoy, because not everyone's going to want to do all the different things, and focus on that one thing, and give yourself at least 90 days to show some sort of
Okay.
results. Because if you do it, a week or 2 weeks or a month even,
Especially in real estate, that's
yeah,
not enough time to tell anything.
no. And,
Yeah.
and realistically, you probably want 6 months, but 90 days, you'll start to see
You
something.
could see movement and
Yeah,
you could see a level of conversion. That makes
right. And
sense.
especially with expireds, a lot of them, they tend to move pretty quickly and
Yeah.
get back on the market
Hmm.
relatively fast.
That makes sense. Okay. I I love that. So I was actually my next question for you would be who are you having the most success with in this market? And it sounds like expireds because you've decided to go in on that one thing and maximize how good you are and the level of effort that you're putting into it. And so that's where you ended up seeing the most success in this market is going 100% into I'm going to make sure that these people who expire on the markets, and for those of you that don't know, expireds canceled after being listed with an agent for 6 months, they expire on the market. Sometimes they decide to relist with that agent. Sometimes they decide not to. Mr. Brian Batiz here has made it his business to reach out to them once they expire and become their new agent and actually make sure they get their house sold. In Florida, I think right now we're seeing about 35 to 45% of homes expire on
Yeah.
the market the first time. Does that sound right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a big number. Like at some point, it was almost like 55,
Yeah.
54%.
Yeah.
So it is a big chunk, especially in Florida. And I think naturally with that, like you have to be so dialed in on the one thing that you're doing. And again, this is my perspective, but I would share it to anyone out there that maybe needs some advice.
Hmm.
Because you could do for sale by owners. I even did that.
That's true.
And I
Yeah.
realized it wasn't for me. Like I didn't like the conversation or the narrative that it was being had.
It's a different type of potential
Completely.
client. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of agents out there that do
That's their bread
that,
and
and
butter.
yeah, they
Yeah.
do super well. And props to them
Yep.
because I just couldn't get it.
I get you. It takes a little while to break into that one too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so kind of going back to that point, so dialed in on the one thing that you're going to be committed to doing. Uh, it was to an extreme where my listing presentation is specific. Like I've got one that's specifically catered to expired listings.
Okay.
And I've created a system, a process of all of my accumulations of like, hey, these are the pain points for these people that are sitting in the same boat for expired listings. This is what they're looking for. This is
Wow.
what they need to hear.
Okay.
And I went through that synthesis, and eventually I came up with, I think it's like a 17-slide presentation
Hmm.
that hits everything. And I've realized that it actually does very, very well. A lot of people are super engaged with it. And so it's just how granular you get on your one thing to then put all your effort behind that and be able to create some sort of business or some sort of return on it.
Yeah. That's very impressive, sir. I think a lot of us we get caught up, especially in this market right now. There's so many different avenues that you can go in, and you were kind of talking about that with the lead source when you first started on your own, being almost overwhelmed with what you're looking at. And even on a team, you can see like, oh, I can go this route, I can go this route, I can try and specialize in this, I can do social media, and even social media is its own animal because there's 30 different routes you can go there.
Right.
And then you got open houses. And so I think it's so easy for us to get lost in there's a million ways to go when I think the best way for us to look at is exactly what you did. What is my highest conversion? What can I do to get in front of that conversion or get that conversion, that lead on the phone? And then what do I do after that to make sure I transfer that from on the phone to an actual meeting?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is just understanding your system behind that.
Yep.
And naturally, it's going to be different. But like you said, I mean, you can do the same thing for sale by owner. You can do it for the new construction community buyers. Like, I think if you take even a step further back, as a person or as an agent, you just have to ask yourself the question of, like, who is my ideal client? Like,
Yeah.
who am I looking for?
I think that's it. Create an avatar for who your client is, who you really want to work with. And that doesn't mean you can't work with other people.
Right.
That just means I myself am going to tailor my approach to this specific person. It's not going to turn off everybody else, but it's going to allow me to be endeared towards this person, and then create your products and create everything that you want to present to be, beneficial to that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So we talked about what you delved into, and maybe that goes hand in hand with this next question. But in this market, was there anything you had to completely turn away from or shy away from because it wasn't maybe
Um,
converting for you? Or
yeah, I mean, as far as shying away from, I would say, um, yeah. So I shy away from working with buyers, right?
okay.
And that's a personal decision,
Hmm.
right? Everyone, you can do whatever you want. There's a lot of buyers agents that only work with buyers, and they do phenomenal.
Correct.
And honestly, I mean, if you ask me, working with a buyer is actually a beautiful thing. Like
Hmm.
you're being a part of a huge step in their life most times, which is awesome. And those buyers then become sellers down the road and referrals down the road.
Yep.
But the one thing, and it's not because I'm not good with buyers. I'm actually very great and good at working
I've
with
seen you work
buyers.
with buyers. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
really good at what you do. Yep.
and so I enjoy it, but I've realized that the reason I shied away from it is because it does require a lot more maintenance, right?
Fair enough.
It does require a lot more time, and if we're being candid, it also has a much lesser probability of closing
Hmm.
because there can be external factors that get in the way of them purchasing, whether it's finances or personal or family or whatever,
Or the house itself. You
or
want
the
to say,
house
yeah.
itself. But I just felt like a business decision for me was to focus mainly on my listings
Okay.
because it was what was working for me required less time per se on the road, and at the same time I could still use all of my additional efforts to keep doing that one thing and exponentially grow that, right? So
I
that's
love
been
that.
what I focused on.
Okay. So I think that goes hand in hand to that one thing. Once you sat down and you were on your own, you identified this is my core clientele and this is who I'm going to go after. I'm literally going to leave everything else right here and
Hmm.
I'm going to make sure I maximize what I can get out of that. I
Yeah,
think I think that's a lot of why you're so successful because your approach to that is what you're focused on.
right,
I love
right.
that.
And I think I started doing when I first started, and I like kind of was trying to figure it out. I wanted to do everything, and I wanted to be
Yeah.
for everyone
Yeah. Well,
naturally.
I think and it's what they say. You can, if you try and go everywhere, you're never going to get anywhere. But
Yeah,
if you just focus on getting one place,
yeah.
you're going to get to that one place eventually.
It's also probably why my marketing sucked too.
Because it was trying to go
It
to
was like, oh,
everyone.
it
Yeah.
was trying to go to
That's a
everyone.
good point about marketing. Yeah,
Oh, I
just like
know it's
that.
what it
Create
is.
your avatar and then you market to them. Oh,
Yeah,
I love that. Okay, well, it sounds like you've really kind of honed in on that, so that's good. Um, so we've kind of touched on what buyers are doing, what sellers are doing. So if you had some advice for me, let's just say I was in your market tomorrow and I said, Brian, I'm looking to buy a house. What advice would you have for me when it comes to buying a house in this market? I know we've touched on a couple things, interest rates and affordability and everything, new construction. Do you have any specific pieces of advice for me as a buyer?
yeah, yeah. So if we're talking, a regular buyer, we're not talking an investor, right?
Nope,
So,
just a
okay,
regular buyer. I want to live in the
perfect.
house and
Yeah,
I don't know where to start.
perfect. The biggest thing would be to sit down and have a conversation with a professional, right? I,
Okay.
I would say that that's number one. Hand in hand with like you're doing that, go ahead, talk to Chat GPT or talk to Google,
Hmm.
Gemini, whatever it
Yeah,
is,
I
and
think we're getting a lot of those AI assistants in the
yeah,
conversation, but yeah,
right. And
yeah.
so, is educate yourself. That's first and foremost.
Okay.
And so, realistically, that probably looks. The reason I say talk to a professional, a local professional, as far as wherever you're at. Like, I'm not going to, talk to my realtor friend down in Miami if I'm buying a house in Orlando,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's
Or
just
your realtor friend in California to talk about a Florida purchase.
right,
Yeah,
right.
I would agree with that.
And so, talk to someone local because that person, if you vet them appropriately and they're actually out there doing deals and they're in the trenches getting work done,
Hmm.
then they understand the local market. And with that, once you get educated and you find whoever it is that's going to help you in the sense, right? Uh, Even further than that, the finances behind it,
Yep.
right? The location, educate yourself on the location, and really, really just take a step back to kind of our earlier point and sit down and say, okay, this is what I'm working with, right? This is my monthly mortgage. Like my monthly budget. That's what I'm going to spend. I can't be above that. I can't be whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd start there because that's going to determine what you can actually buy, right?
Yep.
And then from there, I would make the decision of, okay, where can I buy property based off of my pre-approval amount or whatever my finances say I'm comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And then that education piece is not only online, right, and out there and seeing houses and doing that part, which is great.
Yep.
I think you have to really take it a step further and maybe come back, to the same neighborhood at night, or come back during rush hour or something.
That's good.
Take some extra steps. I feel like a lot of times buyers, they fall in love with the house,
Mm-hmm.
and they never think about the
The
neighborhood or the
external things.
community.
Oh, I think you're so right. I deal with that actually. One of the main things I try and tell buyers to do before closing: go to a school if you have kids.
Yeah.
Go to the grocery store, the nearest one to you.
Right.
Like you said, drive from work to that house to see what that, like, simulate. Go
Right.
there on a Saturday or Sunday morning when it's going to be kind of everybody's off of work, and
Right.
you'll get to hear noise. I so agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, just doing that, and it sounds like, it kind of can be a pain in the butt, especially if you're like, I don't know, an out-of-state buyer, or you live on the other side of town, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be. But taking that time to do that is going to do one of two things. It's either going to reaffirm your decision of wanting to buy that house,
Yep.
which once you close and sign that paperwork, like that's a 30-year commitment.
Oh yeah,
Like
there's no refunds when buying a house.
yeah, and you can't. You move in and you got like the worst neighbors in the world, and
Yeah.
you just never took the time to really pay attention to it, or
Yeah.
whatever it might be.
Unfortunately, neighbor issues are real, and it's
Yeah.
good to qualify that before moving in.
Yeah, exactly. And so just taking a step back, because that would be my biggest advice, is the education piece to it, not letting yourself get completely wrapped up with the emotional, which is
Mhm.
great, which is also really good, why you need a professional in your corner.
I was just about to say, I think our job in the process is to help keep the emotions out of it, and just keep it black and white for a buyer who
Right.
can get very emotional, and understandably
100%.
so, in a transaction.
Yeah, and so you don't want to necessarily take away from that, but like at the same time is, for impulse buying everything, then we're
not going to be happy at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I love that. I think that's sound advice. Have a plan, and make sure the plan is consulted by your agent, your professional you choose, and then a part of that plan should be to not just fall in love with the house, but make sure you're understanding the area you're living in.
100%.
I think that's great, and I think people check that box as a buyer. It's just like we talked about earlier. When you go in with a plan, the hesitation, the resistance, all of that, the process doesn't get easier because it's not easy to buy a house, but it becomes a lot more digestible and manageable for somebody. So I love that.
Yeah.
So we touched about a lot selling a house because that's your specialty, but I'll ask you directly. Same thing. If I was going to sell my house tomorrow and I was talking to you, what advice would you have? Direct advice would you have for me in this market?
Yeah. So what I've seen, and I actually made it a point, like with one of the most recent listings that I signed, is preparation is everything right now.
Okay.
That's probably the biggest thing. And so don't get me wrong. When I conduct and have my conversations with these potential sellers, I give them the liberty, because you don't want to lose the business either, right?
Correct.
Like, you don't want to overwhelm them with this to-do list that all of a sudden they're like, they're going to go back and look at that cash buyer.
Yeah. I can't do this, and then it turns them off. Yeah.
Right. So you make the effort to point out what needs to be done for preparation, right?
Okay.
And for a seller, they think prep, and then they think they're spending thousands of dollars or doing something, some sort of repair, this or that. Doesn't necessarily mean that,
Mm-hmm.
right? What I mean is like the basics, right? So decluttering things, right?
Okay.
Minimizing what's available. In a sense, the way I talk about it is we take what we have. We're not, and I'll tell you, the majority of the houses that I'm selling is, like modest homes, 300,000 to 500,000. Like that is the bread and butter, the majority of my business. So we're not talking luxury. We're not going to go out and spend 10, 12K to go stage
just
the
to
house.
sell a house. Yeah.
And so these people, they're not going to do that either, right?
Mhm.
Like at the end of the day, it's what do we have? How can we work with that? And how can we make the property as presentable as possible with spending the least amount of money that we can, right? If there's something that truly needs to be addressed, because let's say it's external wood rot and it's going to kill a lot of deals
Yep.
anyways, then yeah,
We're going to
maybe.
identify that and address
And
that.
yeah, and we'll
Okay.
talk about if there's a possibility to do that, let's do that. But the preparation piece to it for a seller should be the number one thing on their mind. And the reason being is, to put it into perspective, you've lived in that property probably a handful of years, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
The longer you've lived in there, the more stuff you got.
Yeah, it's crazy how that happens.
Naturally, right? Like that's all of us.
Yeah.
That's the story, at
Yep.
least for a lot of us, right? And so if you're really committed to making this move, you're going to have to box stuff up anyways, right? And so I would be doing you a disservice as an agent if I told you, let's do it as is, just as you got it, and I tell you everything you want to hear,
Mm-hmm.
not what you need to hear, and then we throw it on the market, no plan, no nothing, and you look at the first picture and you can't even identify the dining table because it's behind all this clutter.
Yeah, it's got all this stuff on it and
Right.
really unappealing. Yeah, that
And
can
so,
turn somebody off.
Yeah, so completely that preparation piece goes hand in hand with that presentation to the
Mm-hmm.
property. And so if you take that effort to do it up front, you're just minimizing the work on the back end in reality, if you put that into perspective.
Okay.
So the preparation piece is probably the biggest thing that I would tell sellers, because what I am seeing is that buyers, as they should be, are picky.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that said, you want to minimize any potential margin of that buyer saying or getting turned off by something funky or out of whack that really has nothing to do with the house, because once they move, it's all gone.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important because just like you said towards the beginning of this interview, you said we're dealing with a lot more inventory on the market. So if a buyer has more houses to look for and they're able to disqualify yours because yours looks cluttery and it has a lot of stuff everywhere, and I don't know if that means they took care of the house or I might walk into something else, it makes them ask questions. And even if those questions aren't valid, if they're looking at 5 houses and 3 of them look completely fine and then the other 2 they just question, I think the 3 are what they go to see and the other 2 get disqualified. I would totally agree with that.
Yeah, and especially here in our market, a lot of those buyers, they're looking at new construction. And so you go into new construction and you've got this like turnkey, like beautiful product, like it couldn't be better than that, like it's HGTV.
Yep.
And then you go into a house that's currently being lived in, and the people might not be as HGTV as that other one. Then automatically, like, they're going to disqualify you, just like you said. And it's unfortunately, ignorance is bliss, right? Like there's some buyers that are savvy and maybe they've done this a couple of times and they can look past that stuff.
Correct.
But the majority of them, in my experience, they do not.
Yeah.
And so,
and I don't think what you're sitting here saying is you have to look like new construction.
No.
But I think what you are saying is you have to at least, you want to showcase the best side of your house. And even if that's not new construction, you want to try and clean up. You want to try and make sure counters aren't cluttered. And you want to make sure even if it doesn't look like a brand new house, a buyer can see themselves in the home.
Yeah, exactly. And so you don't need all the fancy new modern furniture and staging it. No. It's minimize what you got.
Minimize.
And like, this is my rule. This is what I tell my clients. If you haven't touched that thing in the past 90 days, you're probably not touching it the next 90.
I would agree. Oh, I love that so much.
And so
that could probably get rid of half the house for some people.
100%. Like, dude, I literally walked into a house and they had like these external storage, like cubbies.
Yep.
And I mean, to each their own. I wouldn't put them in my room, right? But it was like shoes on shoes on shoes that they haven't worn in years.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's blocking the like the back porch, which is like massive and beautiful with a great view, direct access. Like, it's blocking that. So you haven't used it in the past 90, you're not going to use it in the next 90. Like, just get rid of it.
And as you said before, as your agent, I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I didn't bring that up right now while we're having a conversation to say a buyer is going to have an issue with that. That's going to change the way they view the house. So can we do something about that?
Exactly. And you always have that preface as the professional, as the agent, of like, look, I'm not here to upset you, insult you, or like, everyone lives on their own terms and does their own thing behind their doors.
Yep.
Right. But if you want to get across the finish line, this is what it's going to take.
I sell a lot of houses, and what I see is what I'm going to tell you.
Right.
I love
100%.
that. All right. So we've gotten into, I know we touched a little bit on you, But we've had an opportunity to talk about your strategy in this market, what you're seeing in this market. I'd really like to kind of touch on you as the agent, Brian Batiz. And you really touched on how you broke into this, real estate in general. You were a wine salesman. You picked up Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it really kind of got the wheels turning. But I know outside of just being an agent, you're very involved in real estate. I believe you're a real estate investor. You have your hands in a lot of different avenues when it comes to real estate. How'd you get in? How'd you get really involved in this? Is this a family thing? What about real estate was really the calling for you?
Yeah, so I had read that book, and at the time when we first got to Florida, this was probably like 8 years ago. No, almost 10 at this point.
Mm.
But anyways, a long time ago.
Yep.
And so at the time, when I was reading the book, my parents had this idea of flipping their first house,
Oh,
and
okay.
they flipped it with another family member, and they did all right. Not too bad as far as like the return on the money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in essence, when I saw that, I liked the process, just already coming from a background where I'm looking at floor plans and things, an architectural
Yep.
degree and whatnot. So I liked the process. I actually recorded the whole thing, like did all these little
Oh,
videos and
wow,
stuff.
that's
So that
cool.
was like the first project that they did.
Yeah.
And then in my head, when I read the book, I was like, well, like I like real estate, like I like the idea of it. It sounds like you can make a lot of money, and so I was like, well, like I actually went and got my license not to sell, like I was telling you before, but to educate myself on the process.
Mm.
And so
Wow.
in my mind, I was like, if I can get my license and just really understand the behind the scenes, the nooks and crannies, like I will feel that much more comfortable to invest and take risk.
Yep.
Because that's the thing is with investing, your risk, you have to be very risk tolerant,
Correct.
especially for something like a flip,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. I would. There, it has to be up there high.
I mean, I'm telling you, like
Yeah.
nights of like no sleep and nightmares, like I've
Oh,
had it,
especially the
man.
first couple. I'm sure they
Yeah,
can get sketchy.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so for that perspective, we got into it. Let's say this was 2021.
Okay.
And so the first house where I was involved with my family, it was me. And so I do this with my family still, but it's me, my wife, my brother, his wife, and then my father and mother. So
Okay.
that's our society. That's
Oh,
our
wow.
entity per
That's
se.
fantastic. So very close knit.
Yeah, very close. And then a lot of people out there say like, don't do business with family. Like, depends on the family.
Depends. 100%.
Yeah,
Because I think some of the most successful families we have are
yeah.
in business together.
A
So
hundred
yeah,
percent,
I would agree.
And so, with that said, we got into it mainly in the flip world, and we do have some like buy and hold, so long-term rentals,
Okay.
which is great. And there's a mix of them, so some single family, and then there's one multifamily fourplex. But
Very cool.
yeah, but the biggest I think learning experience for me is through flipping property.
Okay.
And it's also the coolest. It really is fun. You have to have the risk tolerance. But what I realized in that process, just as a buyer might in their process, is you can't fall in love with the house. It boils down to the numbers,
Yeah.
And so
Especially with real estate investing.
yeah, and so with that said, when it comes to like a short-term deal, like a fix and flip, you have to be very conservative on your numbers.
Hmm.
This is my mind. So this is my when I got into it, the first deal that we did, full transparency, we thought we were going to make around $30,000 on it,
Oh,
right?
wow. Okay.
That was like the bar, and like I had done all the math, and like I'm telling you, I did the math like 20 times
Yeah.
just to make sure. And I was like, okay, like that's actually pretty good. It was a house that we picked up for like 160, right?
Okay.
We ended up selling it for like 290 something. Anyways, long story short, that deal that was supposed to be 30 netted 49.
Oh, fantastic.
Because one, my numbers were conservative, so
Hmm.
I had some buffer on there. And then two, the market, I didn't really take into account that at the time it was a very hot market.
Hmm.
And so we were going to get multiple offers. Like we ended up getting a few offers that were competing against each other, which is how we
Fantastic.
drove up the net
Yep.
profit.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's like just really a really cool experience to be able to be a part of that. Like I'm telling you that first project, I learned a lot. I got my hands dirty. I did some of the work ourselves, like a lot of replacing like I don't know wood rot or this or that, or like
Hmm.
even demoing like kitchens and things. Like I've done it all.
Wow. Yeah.
And I like to do that,
It is very cool to be working with your hands and seeing it
Yeah.
start somewhere and then, the vision turned into a reality.
Yeah, and so that was our first deal. And so naturally, when you do one and you do good, you want to do another one,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
I've also heard the
Crazy how
horror
that works.
story. I've also heard the other story, like where it's you do the first one and it's a complete nightmare and you never want to do it
You
again.
wash your hands with it. Yep,
Yeah,
I've heard that too.
and so what I'll tell everyone is at the end of the day, it boils down to numbers. It's business. It's numbers. It's not emotions. It's not what you think. It's what the data tells you.
Mm.
Because if you don't, then like our next deal was one that we almost lost. $30,000.
Oh no! Wow.
So it can be very scary.
Yeah.
But you just have to really understand where you're at locally, your local market, and the numbers themselves.
Okay. I love that. That's very cool stuff. And just really quick, with you being an investor, do you guys focus on certain areas in Central Florida, or is it just basically where the deals present themselves?
That's good. A good question. It really just depends on the deal.
Yep.
So if you're looking to invest yourself, you have to establish what's called a buy box, right?
Hmm.
So what you're comfortable with. Me personally, I have risk tolerance, but I don't have enough risk tolerance to go buy a deal like up in the Midwest where I'm not
Out of state or
out of
something.
state.
Yeah,
It's
fair
just
enough.
not my
Yep.
not my thing.
And you do deal with investors with that amount of risk tolerance, but that's a
Yeah.
whole different ballgame.
100%, and so once you understand your buy box, which for me it's local, it's within an hour drive. I can go check up on it this weekend if I need to,
Hmm.
and I've got a team. That would be step two, is a team in place to take care of A through Z, which essentially means for me, getting it all renovated, demoed, all that, and then I put it back on the market,
Hmm.
right? But that I do limit, for example, where I'm buying. And so some of the advice that I will give other people is one, a very attractive price point on the back end is probably what you should look at. So, for example, the first deal,
Hmm.
the ARV, or the after repair value, was just shy of 300,000. Finding a
That's
$300,000 house,
yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
That's in good shape,
Yeah.
very hard.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, that audience, the inventory being so scarce, like that is,
They
you can make
typically
a lot of
jump on
money.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
they tend to sell pretty quickly.
Yep.
So I would niche in on that. Like that would be one of the pieces of advice, and it also means that you spend a lot less money because it's a less expensive home
Hmm.
compared to like the deal that I was telling you about before, which was ARV was closer to 600,000,
Hmm.
and it was like 3 times the size. And we didn't make nearly as much money on that one house. That
Hmm.
was like literally a half of the investment, right, or a third of the investment.
Yep.
And so the,
Wow.
the final piece of advice I'll tell you is you can check all those boxes, but be very tedious with high inventory areas. For example, Point Siena, Davenport, Haines
Yep. Yep.
City, right? Because naturally, those are some of the most competitive environments just with listings alone. You can pull a 2 mile radius and you'll find like 40 houses for sale.
Yeah.
That's probably a red flag.
Gotcha. At
Yeah,
that point, you got to start looking at things like holding costs, longer days on market,
exactly.
more price reductions potentially,
Yeah,
less buyer pool, those kind of
yeah,
things.
and like with that, like same thing. If you're thinking, okay, I'm going to put this house on the market 6 or 7 or 9 months from now, right? What is the pricing today? Great. Let's say it's ARV of 300,000. I'm going to assume worst case and say 6, 7, 9 months from now it's going to be 275.
Yeah.
And that's to some people they're going to be like, well, that's just way too conservative.
Yeah.
Well, that's my risk tolerance,
Yeah.
right?
And
And so
I
it's
would
reached
think
down.
that way you're thinking is why you ended up walking away with 49,000 on the deal
Right.
instead of losing money on the deal, or
Right.
you end up with a deal that maybe doesn't make sense and you're able to catch it initially
Right.
because the numbers are conservative rather than you overestimating and saying, yeah, I could squeeze on this one, and then on the back end you end up losing out. So
Exactly.
as an investor, I feel like you said your risk tolerance has to be, you have to be realistic with yourself as far as that goes.
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, it's sleepless nights and the sweats.
The anxiety starts to creep.
Anxiety. It really does. Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. So we've talked about challenges with the investing and everything along those lines. What would be in your real estate career, selling, helping people buy and sell real estate as an agent? What do you think your biggest challenge was? Would you say that's finding leads once you went out on your own? What do you think that would be for you?
Yeah, yeah. So the biggest challenge, I think, is really just the lead
The
generation,
lead
and I
generation?
think that's and if you kind of like take a step back and look at the industry right now, like people spend thousands and
Hmm.
thousands of dollars, especially like the teams and things like that, to get these leads
Yep.
that they're buying and things like that. So it's obvious that it's always going to be a fundamental and an issue for anyone getting into the business is how do I generate business? How do I
Yep.
generate leads?
Yep.
So that would I would tell you that's the number one thing that I think not only myself I've had the challenge with, but I think everyone will have that and will continue to have it because you might have business today, but if you're not continually working on it, you're
Hmm.
not going to have any tomorrow.
I think that's so true. Literally, the book you talked about, or not the book, not the one, but Gary Keller wrote
Okay.
literally a whole book, Shift.
Hmm.
And the premise of the book is when the real estate market is shifting, your majority of your time and your day needs to shift to lead generation. You need to find new opportunities. You cannot rely on the old opportunities because with the market shift, things that happened before and stuff you relied on before can't be brought into this new market. And I think what you're saying is if every day I wake up and all I focus on is trying to get new clients, it's going to happen eventually. I don't
Right.
I don't guess where my new clients are coming from. I know the work I put in yesterday is going to produce
Yeah.
fruit today. So, I love that.
Yeah.
Do you think so the next question would be, was there a point in your real estate career that there was a big shift for you or a big uptick that really made the productivity you were seeing change or increase?
Yeah. So for especially for the expireds things, it was
Yeah.
like it can be such a um like an obstacle or like a fear to get on the phone and get cussed out by
Yeah.
people and
Yep.
like just randomly cold call people because I'll be honest, like when people cold call me, like I'm not the happiest
I
camper.
get it. Yeah. You start to think you're on the other side of that phone.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And then it's like you hang up the phone. It's like, oh, I'm such a like a
Yeah.
hypocrite.
Yep. Yep.
And my wife gets on me all the time for it, man. But
That's funny.
it's like just really, I think like the thing that I understood was okay. I took a step back. I identified the avatar, did all the things, and then it's like, how can I communicate to these people? And so literally, what I did, one, you just have to do it. Like you
Okay.
learn through like fail forward
Yep.
essentially,
Yep.
right? Get cussed out, mess up the script, do whatever it is. Like essentially, you start.
You have to
You
start.
have to start, and then from there, you just fine tune and kind of you make you make it happen along the way. But what I would suggest, or what really made the difference for me was there's two people that I would tell or encourage the listeners to go out and take a look at. This is what I did like on YouTube. Brandon Mulrennan,
Oh, yep.
real estate coach.
Mm-hmm.
His concept is actually super interesting. His is like reverse selling, is what he calls it. And then you've got on the other side of the spectrum, also very known real estate coach that does expireds and FISBOs and all those, Jackie Kravitz. And
Okay.
so, shout out to both of those people. They're on YouTube, have a great following. They do a lot of coaching business, and they specifically focus on like newer agents and how do we convert expireds or for sale by owners or cancel deals.
Mm.
But what I did was after listening to them and understanding, okay, what is the point? How do I communicate? I just adjusted it to my own language, my own words. And so to a point where practice has just like I don't have to look at the script anymore. It's a
Yeah.
natural conversation and I know exactly where my next thought or my next statement will be at.
I love that. I think what you just said, when it comes to scripting, you looked at the script they provided and you made it your own.
Mhm.
I think that's so important because you're not just reading, you're not a robot, you're not on the phone.
Right.
People can tell that. Was that immediate for you to where you got the scripts or whatever they provided, whether it was like on the YouTube video, say this or whatever that looked like? Was it at that point where you immediately were like, okay, how can I make this my own? Or were you like, let me hop on the phone, let me use this script, and from there, I'm going to tailor it based on the responses I'm getting?
Yeah, great question. So at the time, it was like I got no foundation.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Okay. Fair
could meet
enough.
in person and I could convert it. I knew what to say at the appointment, but it
Yep.
was how do I get through the door?
How do I get in the appointment? How do I book that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I literally I started with Brandon Mulrennan, and there I can't remember where, but he does all sorts of videos, and then he literally gives you the scripts. And so I just took the script, I wrote it down in my notebook one by one, and I think it was like 9 points was like the total like kind of conversation as it should be.
Okay. So,
Um,
like, at this point in the conversation, at this
what
point,
to
okay,
say, right? How to
gotcha.
carry the conversation
Yep.
and all that,
Yep.
and then how to close it. And so I literally just wrote it verbatim. And then when I went to go do it, a little bit of practice before. You can do role play, you can do all those things. For me, I don't like to do role play, but
Hmm.
I did practice it. So I read it enough to where I was comfortable and I knew kind of what I needed to say.
Yep.
So that way, when I was actually on the call, it wasn't like I was just all over the place. And so I did that enough times to a point where I got so comfortable with it that I said, okay, like I can fine tune this and like, how do I make it sound like me? You know? And so I did that, and I adjusted how I start the conversation, the whole preface or the whole kind of like how do you engage with that person. I changed a little bit,
Okay.
taking some of those concepts and making it my own. But at the end of the day, the whole narrative or the full 9 points, like they're still there, just in my own nature.
Just in your words. I
Right.
think that's so important. And I think, like I said, when you get a phone call and it's a cold call, you can tell when somebody is saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, hi, Brian. Did you get this today, or do you need this service?" And so, for us to be on the other side of that phone call and do the same thing, the conversion level is going to drop. So, I think
Yeah.
making it your own with a script like that, especially with you hammering the expireds like you do, I think that I'm starting to see where that conversion level is coming from.
Yeah. And especially so expireds, completely different than for sale by owner, right?
Yeah.
But the expireds, the game is early bird gets the worm, right?
Yep.
You want to hit the list that comes out that day. You want to start at 8 a.m. because that's when you're allowed to start, right? Supposedly,
Yeah.
according to the
Yeah.
law.
Yeah.
And so
Depends on who you ask,
depends on,
but
that's why I'm telling you, it depends on who you ask.
yeah.
Because you'll call them and sometimes they already talked to three people.
Yes. Oh
So,
goodness. Yeah. Yeah.
but, with that said, it's just for expireds, um, you have to think that there's 30, 40 other agents calling them
Hmm.
at the same time.
I
And
would say that's a safe guess
yeah.
to
Oh,
think.
for sure.
Yeah.
Like you'll be on the phone with them and they've gotten 3 calls, like
Yes.
literally.
Yep.
And so early bird gets the worm. That's what I've learned in expireds. And then two is how do you make yourself stand out? Because the conversations that they're hearing is, hey, this is XYZ from XYZ Realty, and I saw your house came off the market. And are you still trying to sell? Okay, great. Like, when can we meet? Like, so very non personable. Like, the conversation is for them is just like, how can I shove this piece of paper in your face?
Yep.
And that's what the prospect thinks,
Hmm.
right? Immediately turned off. Same thing when we get those calls and someone's trying to sell you life insurance or trying to sell you, an upgrade on your, form plan, whatever it might be.
Solar. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So whatever it might be, uh, I've noticed even this. I've caught it on my end. Like you'll get the cliche, "Hey, this is blah 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 from blah blah blah," and then you're like, "Oh, well," you hang up
Yeah.
before they
I
even get
know this
done.
is a cold call.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or
Yeah.
but I've found myself naturally like when someone uses a different hook, like I'll actually engage in the
You give them a
conversation,
little bit
and
of
I'm
time.
like,
Yeah.
what? And I'm like, because I respect it. I'm
Yep.
like, okay, you took the time to figure out something different.
You're
You
not
got
just
my
everybody
attention.
else.
Exactly. And so, yeah, that's what I would
I
tell you
like that.
is how can you stand out when you're making those calls so that you're not sounding just like the 3 people that called right before you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm starting to see where the success and the conversion is coming from. There's not a lot of agents that really choose to go down that path, the cold call, the expires, because there is a level of not unconfidence there. Not everybody is confident when it comes to cold calling. So that's
Yeah.
very impressive that you've built your business on that day in, day out grind and just making sure you
Yeah.
get the most out of it.
Yeah. And, this is where I was coming from a place where to give the audience, some, I guess, some advice is when you start in the business and you have to generate business, you can
Hmm.
go and spend all the money like I did and not get a single return on it.
Yep.
And that can be very costly. Like right now, a postcard is $1 basically per postcard,
Mm.
like mailed to the door.
Yep.
So you're talking a lot of money
If
just
you
to
want to
hit,
send 5,000 postcards,
yeah.
it can be a
And
lot.
then if you think about it, like, you got to send a lot because not all of them are going to convert.
Correct.
Majority of them going in the trash can, right?
Correct.
And so for me, I said, okay, well, one, I'm at this place where I don't have the money, right?
Mhm.
Like I already spent it all and I didn't get anything. So it's like I still need to produce. And cold calling was actually like a very inexpensive way. Like all you really need is a good dialer and then a good lead, like a skip tracer, like for
Yep.
the contact information.
Yep.
And so I think like right now I'm using, I've used a lot of them. I was on Mojo prior, but the thing with Mojo was the data that like the contact information isn't the best, and so you might have 100 leads, but it's able to pull 40. Like
Yeah.
that's what I was seeing, literally half of it. So now I use, it's called batch leads for the skip tracing, which is the contact.
Okay.
And so I'll take the same list, 100, and instead of me getting like 40, 45, which is what Mojo was giving me, I'll get closer to like 76 or 75,
Oh wow.
right? So
Okay, that much
like
more.
30 more people,
Yeah,
right?
it's almost double.
Yeah, and so a very, very great. I think that one's like 120 bucks a month, so super inexpensive,
Yeah.
right? And then I've paired it with, and the dialers. I don't really think makes a huge difference. Mojo's pretty good
As
for
long as it
dialing,
dials,
as
yeah.
long as it
You upload a
dials.
list to it and it dials, yeah.
Yeah, so that way you're not manually dialing it.
Yeah.
But
And can I ask real
yeah,
quick, sorry to interrupt you,
no,
but
you're
I
good.
know they had a big issue with the TCPA and cold calling and
Yeah.
cold texting and all of that. Have you run into any issues with that using a dialer? I know sometimes like the triple dialers where you're not manually clicking to
Hmm.
call, they could be an issue. Sometimes they aren't. Do you know, or would you be willing to give advice on that?
Yeah. So one, we're not lawyers, right? But
100%. We are not
so
lawyers. We can't say that enough today.
yeah. But so like supposedly the whole premise, I think it's you can start 8 a.m. Eastern time to call
Hmm.
people, and then I think the cutoff time is somewhere like around 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. something like that. I'm not sure the cutoff time, but what I've run into is that I've not one, respect the do not call list.
Oh, 100%.
Like there's going to be people out there like they won't and they'll still call them, and that's your own personal decision, but I don't want to fine for a phone
I
call.
was just about to say, if that's your
It's
decision
not
and you're
worth
willing to pay
it.
for it, yeah, by all
Exactly,
means, yeah.
right.
It's not free.
But no, I mean, I haven't run into many issues except the fact that like most of these people are already getting like harassed per se
Yeah,
by everyone and their brother, and they just the last thing they want is another phone call from a stranger.
yeah.
And so it's how do you control the conversation to where they start very annoyed, very angry, to understanding that you're actually someone like a human that's trying to help them,
Hmm.
right? But no, for like legal restrictions, as long as you follow the timelines, I think you're fine. And then the
Okay.
do not call list, like that's the biggest thing.
That's the biggest things to
But
look out for cold calling.
yeah, like the dialer I have, I can switch from. It's called Enzo Dialer. I can do 3 lines, or I can do 1 line, but I can do all the way up to 14 lines at once.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and so it's crazy. It just depends on the size of your list,
Hmm.
essentially. So typically Mojo, like 3 line dialer, that's comfortable. That's what you're going to use for the majority of it.
Hmm.
And so yeah, you don't want to be like taking a bunch of phone calls if you can't answer them.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then you end up with that callback script. You're leaving half of them. Yeah.
yeah,
And then never connect.
exactly.
Okay. Fantastic. So I always like to ask in your market, it sounds like expires are awesome, but I want to ask if somebody had like a referral or something to send your way. What kind of client or what particular type of person, I know maybe not buyers, but what type of client do you feel like you're best suited to assist or you're best suited to help get to the closing table?
Yeah, so definitely the expired listings, right? But what I've actually been pivoting to, and this is just along with the whole idea of me wanting to have my own brand and do my own thing,
Hmm.
and in the investment world, it actually has a lot to do with investments,
Yep.
right? But my game plan for these next few years is to get into the property management space.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so not necessarily. I mean, it's not the sexiest thing out there.
No, it's not.
it's
It's
actually
not.
it's actually can be a very big headache,
Yeah, I
and
was just about to say it's almost the exact opposite of
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. And so the whole premise as to why I'm getting into it is like real estate sales commissions, they can be unstable. As much as
Fair enough.
we can put in all the work we want, but sometimes, the deal dies by itself and you can control only so much,
Yeah.
and it is what it is. And then, so I found myself in these couple of times where I was in the gutters, and I was like, really just trying to move forward and live and afford everything I needed to do, like literally in that position, to where all I could do was go up.
Yeah.
That I'm like, okay, for me, it's like, I just lost my train of thought.
You're good. I was just saying the type of client that could be
Oh, right.
working with
Yeah.
you, and then yeah, you were.
Yeah. So just kind of going from there, I said, okay, well, there is this instability sometimes in the real estate space with our commissions,
Hmm.
right? As much as we like to control that, there's some things we can't. And so the reason I'm getting to property management, one, I come from an investment background, right? So I do like
Right up your
investing,
alley. Yep.
right up my alley. And funny enough, like a lot of those people will probably be buyers that are going to be, buying and investing.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
But that would be my ideal avatar because property management for me, it's going to be more of a gateway for me to be able to work with investors that are going to be serious about, you know, nurturing and creating a long-term path to wealth. And then how can I be hand or side by side with them to make the right decisions, guide them, and then also administer, the rental property itself. So for me, it's like, okay, I like that audience. I like investing. I like
Hmm.
talking about that. So naturally, it's where I like to be at. But how can I create stable income? And that's why property management comes into play in my life because a lot of people, they just, the liability to it,
Yeah,
there's so much that can go wrong that would tell you not to do it.
correct.
And there, I mean, so many brokerages, like even the broker I'm at now, like you're not allowed to do property
Oh,
management
wow.
with them.
Yeah. Okay.
So many of them limit it for the same reason. Completely understandable.
Hmm.
But for me, it's like, okay, well, I can do my sales, naturally bring in this investors or bring this investor audience. And then at the same time, I can manage the property, create a team behind that that'll run the business, right? And still have monthly income, right? And
That
so
makes
if I
sense.
get up to X amount of properties and the numbers equate to this, well, this is steady income for me.
Yep.
And whatever is sales, which I will still be focusing on, because the idea would be to have a team where I'm a little bit more passive in that business, right?
So you're not going all into the property management. You would go in, create a
Right.
team,